Okay. All right. Well, as we go through, as always, if you have any questions, just shout them out or you can send me a message in the chat box. So today we're talking about advanced reporting. So this webinar assumes that attendees have at least attended the basic reporting webinar or watched the recording and have maybe written a couple reports themselves or at least understand the basic mechanics of the reporting in Exago. So I'm not going to go over the mechanics of how to write a basic report, and I'm not going to go over what the various tabs do, categories, filters, sorts, etc. Instead, I'm going to talk today about some of the intermediate and advanced features that make reporting life much easier. So once you start writing some basic reports, there's some kind of basic stuff that people want to do, but involves sort of intermediate functions in Exago. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So I'm going to head over to my enhanced reports, and I've got a very basic donation report that I've already set up in advance of this webinar that we'll be using to demonstrate today. And let's see, my report is called Annual Donation Report. Double check this is my report. So I'm just going into the edit now and show you guys what this report looks like on the back end. So this is a very basic report. What this report is pulling is contact name and some donation information, their donation amount and the date, their campaign, program, and fund that that donation may have been linked to. This report does have sorting. I don't want to sort by city. I'm going to start by sorting just by contact name. And for filters, the only filter I have is on donation date, and it asks to prompt for value. So every time I run the report, it will ask me for the filter dates for the donation dates. So the first thing I want to show you guys is there's a couple of things when you run a report, and the first thing we're going to talk about today is table joins. We get a lot of questions about this. When you run a report, and so this is a donation report, I would expect that it's going to, let me do that again, I want to slow that down, I clicked through that too fast for you guys. So when I run this report, I would expect to just see contacts who are donors, right? So the first thing I want to show you guys is you'll notice there was an error message that came up really fast, right? It said no qualified data on this report, and I'll run it again and show you why that happened. But I want you to notice what happens here, right? It's asking me to filter by donation date. I put nothing in the box and I click OK. What's going to happen now is it's giving me this error message, and it's giving me all this crazy stuff here. And it's saying no data qualified for this report. So this is the first thing. When you get no data qualified for this report, the report is saying with the parameters that you have given it, there is no data in your system that matches. Now I know that there are donations in my system and I have not filtered in any way, so this should be finding donations. So my first response usually is like, listen computer, you are crazy pants, because I know that there are donations in there, so why are you not giving them to me? The reason you get this no data qualified for this report, in a very simple report like this, where literally I've applied no filters and it should be pulling my data, is because of what I just did with that filter. If you have a filter on your report and you're not actually going to use it when you run the report, you need to delete it. You cannot run a report and leave blank filters on. Because basically what this is saying to it is show me all the donations that have no donation date at all. And you can't enter a donation into your system without a donation date, right? Because donation date is a required field. So when you leave filters blank, you're basically telling it to search for null values. And in this case, I can't have a null value with the date because it's a required field. So when you're doing these prompt for value filters and you're not actually filtering and you don't need it, you just click the little X and then run your report. And now it should run fine, in theory. Watch it embarrass me again today, since this is a reschedule of the last time we had technical difficulties. There we go, and it runs fine now. So keep that in mind, that if you've got filters that you're prompting for value, and you don't need it in this instance of running the report, you just click that little red X and take it off. That only takes it off the instance of running this report. It does not delete the underlying filter from my filters tab. It doesn't make any changes basically to the structure of your report. The next time I run it, it'll prompt me for value for those filters again. So keep that in mind. And especially if you've got filters that you've got prompting for value and you don't change them often, 95% of the time you run it for the same set of values. Like if I was going to run this for 2017 most of the time, and then every once in a while I change those dates to something else, then put default values in those filters so you don't have to type it in every time and type the same thing over and over. When you set it up, put the default value in that filter. You can still set for prompt for value, and then at least you've got something in there and you're not going to get that error message. Now the next thing I want to show you guys is you're going to notice my donation report is now 279 pages long, and you're going to notice something a little odd here. I'm getting records that have no donations, right? And as we just discussed, you can't have a donation record in your CRM that does not have a donation amount or donation date or a fund. Those are required fields. You literally cannot enter a donation without those pieces of information. So we get a lot of calls about this too. And people saying, it's showing me everybody in my database. And I only wanted it to show me donors or event attendees or members or volunteers. Why am I getting every record in the system? This has to do with what is called table joins. And I want you to think about for a second, when you're writing a report, and you're pulling data from more than one table. So in this case, I'm pulling information from the contact table, which is my contact name, and also from the donation table, which is the amount, the date, the campaign, the program, and the fund. When you're pulling data from two or more tables, those tables are linked together in pairs, right? Table A links to table B. Table A may also link to table C. Table B may link to C, etc. Whenever you have a pair of tables and they're linked together, as in a report, the computer has the option to show you all of your data from table A, even if there's no matching data in table B, which would be show me all my contacts regardless of whether or not they've made a donation. It has a second option to show you all the data in table B regardless of table A, which would be show me all my donations regardless of whether there's any contact information. Now in your system, those types of records don't exist, but I'll talk in a second about an example of where that could exist. Or the third option is only show me the records where there's a match between a table A and B, which would be what I'm looking for in this report, right? Only show me contacts who have donations. Now, the example they gave you of that second option, right, show me all the records from table B, even if they don't have a match in table A, could be, for instance, if you were pulling event attendees and donations. So in that scenario, the computer has three options to return to you, right? Show me all my event attendees, regardless of whether or not they gave me a donation. Show me all my donors, regardless of whether or not they attended an event, and any event information they have. Or only show me event attendees who are also donors, or only donors who are also event attendees, right? So those are three very different reports. So Exago tries to be clever, and it tries to guess. No, it's not frozen, Janice. I'm just not moving anything. So whenever Exago tries to anticipate what you're looking for in a report and tries to guess which of those scenarios you want, scenario 1, 2, or 3. It always defaults to scenario 1. Show me all the things in table A, and table A is almost always your contacts table. So it's by default, it's always going to show you all of your contacts, and unless it anticipates you only want to see contacts who have matching data in the other table, that's what it's going to give you by default. Now sometimes, about 50% of the time, it could guess that you really only want to see contacts who are also donors and not everybody. 50% of the time, it falls down on the job. When it falls down on the job, like it did here, it incorrectly anticipated that and thought I wanted to see all my contacts, you need to adjust what is called table joins. That's the instructions to the report about which of those scenarios you want to see. To do that, we have to go back into Edit. We're going to go back into our report options, and we're going to go to Advanced Table Joins. Now, it's very important to remember that you cannot adjust table joins in an Express report. You can only do this in a standard report. So if you're in an Express report, you can't do this. This is one of the many reasons that I give to clients to don't even use Express reports. You don't want Express reports, just use standard reports. How to tell if you're in an Express report versus a standard report and how to convert an Express report to a standard report is covered in tutorials in our support library. When you go to table joins, you're going to see option 1, that's scenario 1, show me all my contact data that has matching donation data. Sorry, this is actually option C or 3. So show me contact data that does not have contact data. So this is option 1, and donation data that does not have contact data. This is option 2 that I talked about. So option 3 is always by default, and you can't unselect option 3. But you're going to be presented with these this kind of set of checkboxes for every pair of tables that you have in your report. So if I had a third table, if I had the events table or the membership table in here, I would have these options again presented for the next set of tables. So this is contacts and donations. If I also had events, I would then see contacts and events, and I'd actually see a pairing for donations and events. So you will see multiple pairings here, and you'll have to set the join between each table. In this case, it says, show me all the contact data, even if it doesn't have donation data, and I'm like, nope. I only want to see contact data that has matching donation data. So uncheck the box, and I'm going to hit OK. And now when I run my report, we're going to see that all those extra people have disappeared, and it's just going to show me my donors. Again, prompting me for value, I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want to filter at this point, and it's going to bring up my report, and now hopefully it's not going to be 256 pages any longer. It's going to be something much more reasonable. That's what we do end up with. And there we go. So, ta-da! They are now taken off of my report because I adjusted the table joins. So that's a very common question we get about how to do that and adjust those. Now the next thing I want to show you guys, oh yes, so now instead of 256, we've got 83 pages, much better. So the next thing I want to show you guys now is a feature, and this was covered in last week's report card tutorial, but it's one of my favorite features, and it's super awesome, and nobody knows it exists because it's sort of hidden. It's not very intuitive that this thing exists. When you run a report in HTML version, which is whenever you click this little run button, this runs it in HTML, but also from the index screen, when you go to execute as HTML, you will get these options as well. And opening it in HTML opens it on your screen, and it actually opens it in an interactive environment where you can actually format and filter this report on the fly. And this is super awesome. And not enough people know about it and use it. It makes me sad. The reason this is so awesome is because you'll notice, like, every time you go in a report and like tweak it and then run it again, like, right? Like this is taking, you're like, la, la, la. And if you're trying to tweak things and like make changes just to analyze your data, you're like, okay, first I want to filter and only show general funds. And you run that report and you get your data. And then you're like, okay, now I want to filter and I really only want to see the annual fund. So you go back to edit and you add a filter for the fund, and you change your filter and you run the report again. And if you're trying to do data analysis, that's actually really slow and tedious. It's going to take you all afternoon to do it that way. Versus if you're using the interactive HTML viewer, you can actually manipulate and filter this data and sort it differently on the fly without going back to edit, tweaking the underlying report, and then running it again each time. So what we do is if we click on these 4 little dots, it opens up this hidden little panel here. And you can affect the sort order. So I had sorted this alphabetically by contact name. I can reverse that sort order and change it from A to Z to Z to A. Just going to run, and now it's in reverse order. So I can get to my last page faster if I want to. I can turn on and off columns that I don't want to see. This is also really helpful. Like if you're in a meeting and you've got a group of people analyzing a report and some of the data is distracting or irrelevant and you want people to not focus on it, or instead of like hiding columns on your base report and messing up your base report, you could like hide columns prior to the start of the meeting so people can't see information that may be sensitive or is irrelevant or that it's not appropriate to share with the audience. But again, you don't have to affect your underlying report. And one of the things you're going to notice here is this is referring to column A, B, C, D, E, and F. And you're like, which one is A, B, C, D, and F? You can, toggle things on and off to guess. But also, if you hover up here at the top of the screen, it will reveal these column names. Now, right now, this is giving only alphabetical column names because I did not set the column names in my report. So if I go back to edit here for a minute, you'll notice they say A, B, C, D, E, and F. Often when you create the report from scratch, it will put, once you drag these field names over, it will put those when you're first creating the report. But for any subsequent fields that you add, if I just went off my report there, it just adds it. It didn't add the column name and it doesn't add the label here. But what you can do is you can actually rename these columns. If I right-click here on the column name and go into column info, I can relabel this column. So sometimes when you're making a lot of changes to a report and you move fields to different columns and stuff, these will have the old names from when you first created the report, and that's how you change it. So it's just right-click, go into column info, and then you can change the label. You can also set a sort order for that particular column. So instead of sorting the entire report by fields, which is what the sorts tab is, you can sort the data in any given particular column a certain way as well. So I could sort my whole report by contact name, but then I can also sort these particular columns within that. I can also indicate if I want to hide a column, and I can set column widths, and I can make column widths identical, and etc. So now when I run and go back to my interactive HTML viewer, you're going to see that column F is now labeled as fund, which makes it a little easier to identify various columns. Any questions, by the way? Any questions on the table joins piece? All right, so now you'll notice this refers to fund, and when I hover up here, well, I'm going to wait for it to finish running. There we go. Now this has been changed to fund. So that's how you can relabel your column names on the underlying report. So this is all well and good, right? This is sort of interesting. Yeah, I can turn columns on and off, and I can change my sort order. But that is not all you can do in this interactive HTML viewer. Like I said, it's super awesome. I can actually filter and customize formatting on the fly here. Where you right-click makes a difference. So for instance, this is my donation amount, and I forgot to format it as currency here, but this is a currency field. If I click on 50 and right-click on 50, I now can change formatting, and I can say apply this formatting to all. So if I say bold, it's going to make everything bold, right? But I can choose to apply the formatting only to things that are the same as what I clicked on, so equal value. So only things that are $50 will get whatever formatting I select next. Apply to unequal values, which means anything that's not $50, greater than 50, greater than or equal to 50, less than 50, or less than or equal to 50. So if I say greater values and I change the font to red, and sure, we'll make it bigger, you'll notice, and this, like I said, it's interactive. It changes instantly. The report doesn't run again. It's already cached the data, and it's just going to apply it to the data that's already showing. So you'll notice I said apply to greater values, and I had clicked on 50. So anything greater than 50, I said make it red and a little bigger. And sure enough, there you go. Now they're standing out, and I can see those easily. I can apply multiple formatting here. So I could, again, click on 50, and I could say to lesser values, let's make those blue. So now I've got red and blue and black. So I've got multiple colors going on here, right? So I can do that to any of these columns. So I could go to fund and I could say every donation that's a general fund, make it pink, make it purple, change the font size, italicize it, bold it, change the alignment, etc. But what I can also do is I can filter, which means I can hide values on this report as well. So I could say apply to lesser values, filter. Now it's going to take a second, it's going to run, and it's going to hide any of those values that are less than 50. No, sorry. I always get this backwards. This one, frankly, is not intuitive to me. So if the value is less than 50, show it. Actually, that's what the filter means, is show whatever I pick here. My brain, at least, filtering for less than 50. No, I guess that makes sense. It's my brain. Sorry, my brain doesn't make sense. Anyway, so I said to it, yeah, apply this filter for anything that's less than 50, which means show me anything less than 50. And anything over 50 has now been hidden. Now I can get rid of those filters by going over here and just clicking the X, and it'll bring back all my things. Ta-da! So we can now get super exciting, right? Because I could filter this report by date, by campaign, by program, by fund, etc. And I can now analyze my data on the fly. Now this is still great, but this is still not all that you can do with this. I feel like, you know, game show host. And wait, there's more. You can also set interactive hard-coded filters inside to use with the HTML viewer. And those filters are actually super fun because you can have a drop-down box, you can have a slider, and you can have a double-ended slider, which are super fun. I just like playing with those. To set those, we're going to go back in to our edit. We're going to go to options, and we're going to go to report viewer. And in here, you can set a whole bunch of things about how the interactive HTML viewer works. So you can tell it to simulate a PDF or not, allow hiding and showing columns in the report viewer. So you could actually turn that off so that people can't hide columns. Filters, we're going to come back to in a second, and sorts. This is where you can set sort orders that you can interact with on the report viewer. Again, this does not change the underlying base report and how that is sorted. This just gives you sort options that you can use inside your interactive viewer. So you can actually, I could add additional sorts here if I wanted. On the filters now, I can go in here and I can add filters that, again, will just be available through the interactive viewer, not when I run the report regularly, like to run it to CSV or Excel or PDF, but that will just let me interact with it on the screen. So I could, for instance, I'm going to add donation amount and donation date, just clicking and dragging, and then fund. When I click on each of these now, it's going to give me an option. What type of filter do I want it to be? Single choice, which means I can only pick one option. Multiple choice, which will let me pick more than one. A range slider or a single slider. Single slider means you can only affect one end of the range. Range slider gives you two slides, so you can affect the max and the min, basically, and I'll show you what that means. Well, let's do that for, I'm going to do that range slider for the donation amount. And do I want to sort the values that are populated into my filter, not the values of the report? This isn't sorting the report. This is sorting. If I did like a single choice, this is going to give me a drop down when I run this and play with the interactive HTML viewer, and it's saying that drop down, how do you want the values in it sorted, ascending or descending order? So I'm going to do a range slider. I can apply a filter to the value format. I can write a formula basically in here. And then do I initially want to display it on the panel? So I'm going to say yes. And then my donation date, I'm going to pick as a single slider. And I'm going to say yes. And then for my fund, I'm going to say I'm only going to allow single choice. Sure, why not? And I'm not going to initially display that filter on the panel to show you what that means. So now I'm going to click OK. And now when I go back and run this in my interactive HTML viewer, take off that. All right, so it's finished up running here, but now you're going to see I have these extra filters over here on my control panel. These are the filters that I just added. Now I said initially show donation date and donation amount on the panel. That was that checkbox, show initially. Any other filters that I've added that I do not initially show, I can add by clicking on this little plus, and here's that third one I had identified was the donation fund, and then I can add it here. This is just to, you can decide if, how cluttered, if you've got like 20 filters and the ones that you're going to use the most often or use right away. That's why it lets you decide whether or not to show those initially, is to keep this as uncluttered. Now, as I said, I picked donation fund as a single choice, so it's presenting a drop down here. So I pick scholarship fund. It's immediately going to react and it's going to start working, and it's going to filter this and now show me only donations that were made against my scholarship fund. Boop, there they are. Donation date, I said, was a single slider. As I said, this allows you to basically just pick one end of the range versus this is the multi-select where I've got two ends. So now what this is saying is show me donation made between basically, oops, why is it not like that? Oh, because I want to go this way. Let's try that. Yeah. So this a date was not a good one for this. I should have done a range for the dates instead of a single size. So this is picking like a actual date here, and I don't have any donations for these particular dates, so that's why it's kind of like, nope. I could keep trying to randomly pick one, but we won't do that. And then finally, the donation amount. Right now I've got it set between 1 and the greatest donation I have in the system. By default, it'll pick your max, but I could bring this down and say, show me all the donations between $0 and $350. It's thinking hard. And there we go. And as I scroll down, you're not going to see any donations on here that are more than $350. I could bring this up so I could say, show me everything that's between, 65 and 1, 2, 3, 4 that I managed to fall on just perfectly. Oops, I don't know why that, there we go. Still thinking hard. Okay, so there you go. So now I shouldn't have anything that's less than $65 and nothing greater than $1,234. So that's kind of how those filters work, how you can adjust the filters. So again, I think board meetings suddenly just got a lot more interesting because this is better than like trying to print out a static report and hand out hard copies to people, and then somebody will ask you a question that basically involves data analysis, and they'll say, but how many donations came in between February 1st and March 31st? And you'll be like, I don't know, I got to go look that up. Versus you could just have this with you in a meeting and you can adjust the information on the fly. Or again, yourself, if you're trying to analyze information about your data, instead of writing 16 different reports or going back in, adjusting the filters and rerunning the report, you can just interact with it on the fly here. Now all these changes I've made here that I apply with the interactive HTML viewer are not saved. They're only on the interactive viewer unless I actually go up here and save. And if I save, I can actually save changes to the existing report or save the changes as a new report. So if I had left the colored formatting on here and changed everything that was $100 or more to red, if I save changes to the report, the next time I run the report, everything that's $100 or more will be red. If I save it as a new report, then I could do basically a save as and have that color formatting saved, but my underlying base report will still be kind of this clean slate that doesn't have any of this formatting I applied. I can also, after filtering, I can export this report, and then I can export it as a PDF or rich text format or CSV. So you can, use this interactive HTML viewer to like analyze the report and then export those results. So if you're like, I need a report by fund, by program, by campaign, instead of running 3 reports, run one report, use the interactive HTML viewer to filter by campaign, export that one, refilter it by program, export that one, refilter it by fund, export that one. And that is actually going to be much, much faster than going back into your underlying report, changing the hard-coded filters, or just running it if you've got a prompt for value for fund, entering the new fund value and running it again. Any questions about the interactive HTML viewer? Okay. All right, well then let's move on. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is using a saved search in a report. So Exago has a couple of limitations. There are some things that you cannot easily do in Exago. You can't filter by a sum, right? So if you want to write a report that says, show me everybody who donated more than $500 total ever or in a given time period, you can't do that in Exago, because Exago filters, then does math. You can't tell it to do math, then filter. You can't filter by a null value in Exago. And you can't filter out a contact type, right? You can't say, show me everybody who's not a donor. Show me everybody who's a member but not a student. You can't do those in Exago. Can't do it, no way, no how. You can, however, do it in an advanced search. So what you can actually do is write an advanced search, save that advanced search, give it a name, and save it, and you can actually drop a saved search into a report. So there are times when it's going to be faster and easier to write your report logic in an advanced search, and then if you need data that is beyond what is in the search results export, because you can't customize the export, the columns, so if you need something beyond like name, address, email, and phone number, then you're going to need to write a report to customize those columns that you're seeing, but you can use the logic of the saved search. So for instance, I could say, show me, I'm going to go down to my donors, donations, gift info, here we go, gift information, and I'm going to say, show me gift amount is greater than or equal to $500, and this little grouping option here, sum. So this is sum total. If I don't put a grouping, this just means show me individual donations that are greater than $500. But if I say sum, this means show me total donation amount. Now, if I want to limit that by date, I could add a second criteria here and put, and the donation date is between these certain dates or before or after a certain date. I can also apply this to a household, by the way, so I could say show me any households, or show me anybody who has donated $500 or more, and if it's a household, count the household total towards that $500 limit. If I want to save this, all I have to do is give it there we go, very long title, but you just have to give it a name. And now when I click search, it's going to save this saved search. So these, I have my existing saved searches that I've previously created that I can retrieve from here. And I'm sure you all know that you can manipulate your saved searches. You can rename them, edit the criteria, and delete any unwanted ones from the configurations menu. So that's where you can go to configurations to change any of those. But here's my saved search. So I got 122 people, starting with Acme and Alameda and Amy, etc. I can now take this saved search and I can drop it into an enhanced report. Now the thing to remember about using a saved search with in an enhanced report is that you cannot further filter the criteria, because the saved searches criteria is your filter. And I can't limit the data that I'm going to see about these contacts to just the qualifying data that got these people onto this report. What I mean by that is when you run a search, right, you're coming up with a list of names. That's what the search is giving you in the report. It's giving you a list of names of people who meet the criteria that you put into your search. So in this case, if I want to see, if I had said, show me everybody who made a donation of $500 or more total between since January 1st of this year, right? So everybody who's donated more than $500 in 2017. If I then go into this report and drop that save search in and then ask it to show me the details of those donations, it's going to show me all the donations that those contacts have made, even the ones that are not in 2017. Because the way the advanced search works is it's giving you a list of contacts who meet the criteria. So those 122 people that I just pulled up meet the criteria. When I drop those 122 people in a report, any data I ask to see about those people, it's going to show me all the data related to those people. And I know if you have a question about that, please ask, because I know it's a little bit hard to explain sometimes without examples. People are always like, I'm not exactly sure, like, why can't it limit the donations that it's showing me? And it's just because, again, you're not writing a report, you're writing a search, which is giving you a list of names, and then the report gives you the ability to pull in information, but not to filter that information, if that makes sense. So we're going to this report, to use that save search, you're going to always pull in this contact save search table. That's when you want. If you want to see information about the people, you can pull in any other information, including like their work history, their household information, their emails, their mailing addresses, whatever. In this case, I'll give you, we can go in and we can pull in their donation table too, so you can actually see what I was talking about. I'm going to go to next. We'll sort it by contact name, because that's how I sort everything in the world. And then, so this is the one thing on the filters, the only thing you can do is you're going to put in search name. And then down here, you're going to put in the name of that saved search that you did. So in this case, so it's, I clicked on it, it's going to bring up the whole list. I could start typing here to try to find it. I know it's down here. Let's see, greater than or equal to $500. So this is the name of the saved search that has the criteria that you want to use in this report. And that's basically the only filter you can put in. You're not going to be able to filter this further in any way. So any additional filters you want, you need to make sure are in your search criteria. And finally, here I can go and I can get my contact name. And I can get, if I want to see those donations, so I can get those donation date. Oop, come on. There you go. There we go. And there, basic report, and finish. It's going to go in and it's going to, do as a standard report here in my layout. And then when I run it now, I should have a list of 122 people. Now my report's going to be more than 122 pages long. Or, well, I hope it's not going to be 122 pages long, but it's going to not match up exactly because oh, didn't like that. Why did you not like that, baby? Uh-oh. I don't know what I just did to it. Didn't like that at all. Oh, because now here, this is what I was talking about before. So I'm using more than one table, so I've got multiple sets of joins, what that it's asking for. So let's see if it likes that better. Oh, all right. I'm not exactly sure why it's unhappy. That usually works. There must be something funky with my data, which is not unusual in my demo system. We do have a tutorial on this in the support library that has a video that will show you that. It does actually work. It usually works. I don't know why it didn't like that today. What did I pick? Just always wants to be difficult. Okay. Well, I don't know why it's saying that. I'll have to then play with that some more. But anyways, so that's how you can get around some of the limitations of Exago in terms of not being able to filter by a null value, and not being able to filter out contact types, and not being able to filter by total sums. Now, there is another workaround for filtering by total sum. This is one of the most frequently requested types of reports that people request assistance with. Is I want to see all my donors who donated more than a total sum amount. So the other option is to apply conditional formatting to your report. So run the report to say, show me all the donations, add a footer to sum up the donation by contact type, and then apply conditional formatting to that footer where you say suppress any contacts, or basically suppress the footer and detail section of anybody whose sum total is less than $500 or less than $10,000 or whatever it is. There's pros and cons to both approaches. Writing it as a report and using the conditional formatting allows you the ability to add more complicated filters inside the report, and control the detail level information. But you have to see everybody, and then you have to put them in a footer, and that limits your detail section, because you can only put in a footer or a header stuff that's unique. So if you want to be able to see the details of those donations, you're not going to be able to see that in that report that way. Versus if you do the Save Search, you're going to see all the donations, like all the details of the donations for all time. Now you could then apply a conditional formatting to suppress the ones that are outside your time range or your amount range or whatever you want, but you can't filter out those values on the filter. So it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, and it's really going to depend on kind of what else you're trying to do with that report. But just know that there are a couple of different workarounds. Went from Save Search screen to Enhanced Report. All I did, Janice, was just went from the Save Search and went to Main Menu and picked Enhanced Reports, just the normal way. All right, so the last thing I want to talk to you guys about now is getting fancy with your reports here and talk about formulas. One of the best features of, oops, I just picked, that was not the report I wanted. One of the best features of Exago is the fact that you can do, sorry, I can't apparently talk and scroll at the same time, but where did my report go? Oh, here we go. Is that you can do math inside the report. I wanted this so badly in version 1. I was a client and I wanted it more than anything in version 1. And I do remember, and I loved Eric dearly, don't get me wrong, but I said to him one day, I want to be able to do math inside of reports. And he said, why would you want that? And I was like, why wouldn't somebody want that? Listen, mailing lists are all well and good, but really the entire point of a database is the ability to analyze your data, right? Like if you're putting data in and you can't pull it out to analyze it and have it tell you information, then it's really sort of a very nice paperweight, right? So mailing lists are all well and good, but the real power of reporting is when you can sort of analyze and look for trends. And part of that is being able to do math, right? I want to see the sum total per fund or per program or per campaign or revenue brought in by an event, or donation or fees, membership fees, and I want to be able to sum total those by year, by level, like membership level, by year, by source, like how did they come into me and get to me, like what percentage of my donations are coming in online and what percentage are coming in by mail and what percentage are coming in response to my annual appeal letter versus my Giving Tuesday campaign. Like if I can't get that kind of data, then it's sort of difficult, right? And it's sort of really not helpful to what I'm trying to do, because especially I was the director of fundraising. I was also the director of evaluation. My nonprofit, we wanted to be able to know things about our participants as well, like, what percentage of our people are different income brackets? What percentage of our participants are, like, where do they live? Do they live in our community or are they coming in from other places to take our programs? Like, how far is our reach? And, the demographics, education, are they working? What kind of jobs are they working? Their household income, how many kids they have, what ages those kids are. Like just basic ability to segment your data and look at it in different ways. And that relies almost entirely on the ability to add sorting and grouping and formulas and do math. When we talk about doing math and formulas and functions inside of Exago, everything magical is hidden inside this little FX button. This little FX button is your bestest friend in the whole wide world, and you want to go in here and just play with these formulas. I highly encourage you to just like open these up and kind of look and see what is in here and see what these things do. And when you click on something, it actually will tell you kind of what it does. So it will give you some basic information about how it works and what it does. So here's one: returns the number of data rows for a specific report execution. Some of the explanations are like, what? What does that mean? But most of them will give you a really great explanation of what it is and what it wants from you. You know, sometimes I find myself shouting at it, what do you want from me? In terms of the syntax that it's requiring. You can basically do anything in the whole wide world here that you could ever want to do, including like a replace. You can pull the left, right functions, upper range, min, max, apply formatting inside of here. This is where the most magical functions of all occur. Format phone number. Phone numbers will come out as unformatted strings, just a line of numbers, and if you want it formatted in, right now it's only for the USA format, so if you have international phone numbers, you cannot format for those, but for USA phone numbers, you can get the report to automatically format it as a phone number for you, so it'll have parentheses and dashes, and so that way it makes it easier if you're trying to do like a call list for people. You know, if you're going to do like phone banking where you're going to be calling a bunch of constituents to remind them to go vote or ask them to make a donation or whatever it is. You can get contact tags and types is a really good function. What will happen when you run a report is that for each contact there will be a you'll get one tag or one contact type per line. So if John Smith has 2 contact types, if he's a member and a donor, he'll show up on your report twice, once for donor and once for member, and those types will each be on a separate line. Get contact type and get contact tag will return all types or all tags, as appropriate, per contact on one line, separated by commas. Get long state will convert a state from the two-letter abbreviation to the full state name. You can add line number, which is super awesome when you've got a long report and if you want to just have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 running down the side, which makes it, if you do have like a printed out report and you're trying to talk about it in a meeting and people are like, about halfway down page 6, you know, I see this, and people are like, which page, where are you? It's much easier if you add the line numbers to your report, and then people can be like, line 56, I have a question about that item. So that's a nice function. You can add an image to your report by using these two functions. Up here under aggregate, this is also magical things. This is where you can get it to do math for you. So add a sum total, count, add a distinct count. So this is if you want a distinct count of your volunteers, versus count would be if somebody did more than one thing for you. Like if you're pulling a report of like volunteer opportunities and you're like, count how many volunteers volunteered last year. Well, Sally may have volunteered for 3 things, right? So Sally would be counted 3 times using the count function, which sometimes it's legitimate and you want to know, like, you know, how many people came. Like, for instance, at my nonprofit, we would always, we'd have people who took multiple classes with us. Well, those people received a service. So in terms of reporting back to a funder, like how many people took Class A, how many took Class B, how many took Class C, it's legitimate to count those people multiple times because 20 people did take Class A and 20 people took Class B. There were some repeats, but each time, like my class was at capacity, like butts and chairs, 20 people each time, versus sometimes you want the unique, distinct count. You know, how many people did we service is a very different question than how many people came to our classes, right? So you have both of those functions available to you. And then also be able to count an average and to pull the minimum or maximum value from a field. So for instance, donation amount, AgMin would show the minimum or the least amount that each donor had donated, versus max would show you the maximum amount that they have ever donated or within the time range that you've specified. Adding formulas, you can do it a couple of ways. You can either click on a cell and click the FX button and then add your formula right in here and use the syntax. You can also double click on any of these cells and you can actually just type a formula. So I could say like ag sum, open parenthesis, donation amount. What's my amount? There it is. And then I can actually even type it if I know the syntax. So once you start doing formulas, you're going to find it's actually a lot of times faster just to type the formula that you want if you know the syntax. So I can stick that there. Now, AgSum actually only works in a footer. I can't do that here, but just for example purpose. The other thing you can do is you can actually treat this like Excel, right? So I could actually say this is going to be, let's see, where's my donation amount? B4, right? B4 donation amount times 10%, right? And so I can actually type formulas in here, and when I run this, it would actually pull that up and multiply this field by that amount, as long as this field is formatted as a number. One thing you always want to make sure to. Okay, yep, it's a, and in case, I'll put a currency symbol, show why not. So as long as it's formatted as a number, it's now going to allow me to do math. So you can then use that to compute different things. You know, if I wanted to say on average, you know, I don't know, if I was computing the tax rate I was going to have to pay on these donations or something. I don't know. I just made that up. But whatever, if you can actually just do raw math inside of here and multiply against certain fields. I could multiply two fields. I could say this is B4 times, you know, if I had another field here, I could say it's B4 times G12, you know, if I had those fields on this report. So you can add, subtract, multiply, divide fields against each other as well, and just type that as a base formula. Now let's see, Janice had a question about formatting the zip. There is no function to format a zip code as a zip code, because you just have to make sure that that is formatted as a text field. It's going to probably try and save itself as like a number by default, and you just want to make sure you convert that to text so you don't drop that leading zero. Is that the issue? Yeah. So for zip codes, just make sure you format it as text, especially before you export to Excel, because yeah, New England, we got all those leading zero zip codes, and it always wants to drop them. All right, well, we are just about out of time. The Fundly Connect webinar is going to start in a couple minutes. So are there any questions about anything that I covered today? All right. Well, hopefully that is some information, some tips and tricks that will help you guys kind of get your reports to look the way you want them to. Some of the workarounds for some of the trickier things that you can't do in Exago, some of the limitations, but to get the data that you want, and then to get you guys starting to use formulas and functions to know that you can do math inside of this. Again, the ag functions, you can only do those in footer, so you have to add a grouping. There is tutorials in the tutorial library on how to do those under the reporting section. We have a bunch of tutorials, and every Monday we add a new tutorial and we email everybody. There's a newsletter called the Report Card that goes out every Monday morning, usually. I think it was a little late this week. It was like late Monday morning. but goes out every morning with a new tip and trick and tutorial on how to do something. So you'll see, like, here's how to adjust the table joins, how to get a report with no duplicate names. This basically talks about how to use grouping, how to group, how to convert a basic to a standard, the month names. This is my favorite function. It's super easy to use, how to use the format phones, etc., how to use the save search. So we add a new tutorial every Monday that's very very specific and very kind of bite-sized, and then you'll get an email with that as well, with the link to that and what this week's topic is. We also have our report huddles. For April, we have moved those to Thursdays. They used to be on Mondays. And we're doing something a little different for April with the report huddles. Each one is going to be much more narrowly focused and not so much an open-ended drop-in help session. So tomorrow, we will be doing contact reports. And we're going to be talking about, like, how to build a contact report that contains no duplicates. So one of those, like, mailing list reports, and how to filter by contact type or tag, and how to use that get contact type and get contact tag function, how to group by household, how to create a one field that has a household, that has a salutation, so like doing a mailing list report that has the salutation, that has the individual salutation if they're individual, or the household if they're a household. And then there'll also be Q&A, and you can ask about specific type of contact reports you may be working on as well. That's it for me. I've got to run and turn over the GoToMeeting to my Fundly Connect partners. But if you guys have any questions, you know how to reach us. Just send us a support ticket. You can always just email us at support@fundly.com, or come to our Friday drop-in help session, or come to a report huddle. All right, everybody. Thanks, Janice. Thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you all soon.